Question: are you one of the millions whose life plans are parked because of student loans? I've seen friends and viewers choose paychecks over passion, delay homes and families, and feel stuck. In this video, The Price of Knowledge: Why Student Debt is Destroying Dreams, I'll show how debt actually steals opportunities, reveal the real costs, and give 3 practical moves you can start using to take your life back. The problem with student debt starts with its scale. Today, the average student in the United States graduates owing over $37,000, and that is just an average number. Many owe much more, and the total national student loan balance has passed $1.7 trillion. When you put that into perspective, it is larger than the GDP of many countries. For the individual, this debt is not just a number on paper. It's a weight that dictates major life decisions. Instead of asking what career path excites them, many graduates ask, what career will let me pay these loans fast enough to survive? That shift in mindset changes everything. Instead of pursuing passions, innovation, or fields that might take longer to pay off but create greater long-term value, people chase jobs that are safe, stable, and high-paying even if they don't align with their true goals. That's why so many feel their dreams are destroyed before they even have the chance to chase them. The financial pressure starts early. Monthly loan payments of $300 to $600 can eat up a huge chunk of a young person's paycheck. For someone making $40,000 a year right out of college, this is the equivalent of losing 20% of their take-home income. That leaves less room for savings, less room for investments, and less room to build wealth. This is where the long-term consequences compound. By the time someone in their late 20s or early 30s is trying to buy a home, they are often already years behind. Their peers who avoided student loans may have a down payment saved, a growing investment account, or even small businesses started. Meanwhile, the indebted graduate is still trying to get their balance below where it started because interest has been accumulating faster than they could keep up. The solution begins with tackling the scale of the problem directly. On a personal level, students and families need to start thinking of college as a financial investment rather than an automatic step in life. Just because society says a degree is necessary doesn't mean every degree at every price point is a smart choice. Community colleges, in-state schools, and scholarship hunting are underrated strategies that can save tens of thousands of dollars. Another solution is choosing a degree based on return on investment. That doesn't mean ignoring passion, but it does mean balancing it with the reality of debt repayment. For example, going into $150,000 of debt for a degree that leads to a $40,000 job is not a smart trade-off, but finding ways to reduce the upfront cost while still pursuing that path, like taking core credits at a community college or working part-time during school, can dramatically change the equation. Beyond prevention, solutions exist for those already struggling. Income-driven repayment plans, refinancing options, and even employer assistance programs can ease the monthly burden and allow graduates to redirect some of their money into wealth building. Another key step is increasing financial literacy before and during college. Many students sign promissory notes without fully understanding interest accrual, repayment schedules, or the true cost over time. Educating people earlier could prevent many from signing up for a lifetime of debt they later regret. Take the example of someone I know personally who graduated with over 80 hours allowance in student loans. At first, the debt felt impossible. They were working in a field they loved, but the pay was modest, and nearly half of their paycheck went straight to loans. After a year of struggling, they decided to refinance at a lower interest rate, cut living expenses to the bare minimum, and pick up freelance work on weekends. Within 5 years, they managed to cut the balance in half, and with some disciplined investing, they were able to offset the rest of the debt's weight with growing assets. This example proves that while the scale of debt is massive, there are ways to fight back with strategy, discipline, and smart financial choices. The second big problem with student debt is the opportunity cost it creates. Opportunity cost means what you give up because of one choice, and for millions of graduates, student debt forces them to sacrifice major life goals in exchange for keeping up with loan payments. When you're spending hundreds of dollars each month just to cover the minimum balance, that's money you can't use for other critical areas. You can't put that money into savings, you can't invest in the stock market, you can't start a business, and you often can't even build a basic emergency fund. Over time, the cost of those missed opportunities becomes far greater than the loan balance itself. Imagine investing just $300 a month from age 22 into an index fund. By age 40, that could grow to over $200,000. Instead, those dollars are going to interest payments that don't build any wealth. The problem is even deeper because these missed opportunities show up in every stage of life. Graduates put off buying homes, which not only delays stability, but also means they miss out on years of property appreciation. They wait longer to start families because the financial stress of loans makes the thought of raising children overwhelming. Even retirement savings, something most young people don't think about, takes a massive hit. The first 10 years of adult financial life are the most powerful because of compounding interest, but student loans steal those years leaving borrowers scrambling to catch up in their 30s and 40s. What looks like a short-term sacrifice actually snowballs into decades of lost wealth, building potential. The solution starts by reframing how people think about their limited financial resources. The key is to minimize opportunity cost as much as possible, even while paying off loans. That means making strategic decisions about spending, saving, and investing alongside debt repayment. For example, rather than throwing every extra dollar at loans with low interest rates, it may make more sense to pay the minimum and invest the difference where returns are higher. If your loan is at 4% interest, but you can consistently get 7% in the stock market, then every dollar not invested is another opportunity lost. This doesn't mean ignoring debt altogether, but rather striking a balance between reducing what you owe and building wealth at the same time. Another solution is using debt repayment strategies that accelerate the process without completely sacrificing other goals. Methods like the debt avalanche, focusing on the highest interest loan first, or the debt snowball, paying off the smallest balance to build momentum, can help borrowers free up cash flow faster. Once a loan is eliminated, that money can be redirected to savings, investments, or even a down payment fund. On top of that, leveraging side hustles, freelancing, or gig work can create extra income streams that specifically target loan repayment while preserving the primary paycheck for wealth-building activities. The goal is to not let debt dictate every financial move, but instead to carve out space where progress can still happen in other areas. Take the example of a graduate named Sarah who left college with about $50,000 in debt. At first, she did what most people do. She funneled every extra penny into the loans, but after a couple of years, she realized she was missing out on investing opportunities. She switched strategies. She kept paying the loans, but at the same time, she opened a Roth IRA and started contributing $2,000 a month. Over the next decade, that account grew significantly, giving her both peace of mind and a head start on retirement. By the time she finally paid off her loans in year 12, she also had tens of thousands invested, which she wouldn't have had if she focused solely on debt. This example shows that opportunity cost doesn't have to destroy your future if you approach it with a strategy that balances both repayment and wealth creation. One of the most damaging parts of student debt is not just the numbers on a statement, but the mental toll it takes on people carrying it. Debt creates stress, anxiety, and constant uncertainty that bleeds into every area of life. For many graduates, the moment they leave college, instead of feeling proud of their accomplishment, they feel like they are stepping into a cage. The knowledge that they owe tens of thousands of dollars changes how they think about risk, opportunity, and even their sense of freedom. Every decision, whether it's to move to a new city, take a chance on a career they love, or even travel, gets filtered through the question, how will I make my next payment? This constant mental strain leads to delayed milestones. People wait longer to get married, longer to have kids, longer to buy a home, and sometimes they never do those things at all because the debt keeps them locked in survival mode. The pressure doesn't stop with money management. Studies have shown that borrowers with heavy debt loads are more likely to experience depression and anxiety than those without. The feeling of being trapped can erode confidence and motivation, which creates a cycle where opportunities to get ahead are ignored out of fear. Imagine being offered a job you're passionate about, but turning it down because the salary doesn't cover the monthly payment schedule. That decision isn't made freely. It's made under the shadow of debt. Over time, that stress affects physical health too, with sleepless nights, unhealthy coping habits, and burnout from working extra hours just to make ends meet. The real tragedy is that instead of education unlocking potential, it ends up caging it. The solution starts with addressing the mental and emotional side of debt, not just the financial mechanics. While repayment strategies are essential, equally important is creating a mindset shift around how borrowers view their situation. One key strategy is building a structured plan rather than living in constant uncertainty. When people don't know how long their debt will last, it feels endless. But breaking it down into a clear timeline with specific milestones can reduce anxiety. Even if the payoff is years away, seeing progress month by month provides hope and motivation. Another part of the solution is using support systems. Debt feels isolating, but talking openly with peers, financial advisors, or even online communities helps normalize the struggle and keeps people from feeling like failures. Another approach to managing the mental toll is combining debt repayment with small, intentional wins outside of money. For example, if someone is drowning in payments, it's easy to give up on all personal goals until the debt is gone. But allowing yourself small victories, like taking a budget-friendly trip, starting a hobby, or saving a modest emergency fund, creates a sense of progress that balances out the pressure. Employers and institutions can also play a role by offering wellness programs, financial literacy workshops, or mental health support specifically targeted at young professionals with loans. This combination of financial planning and emotional support creates a healthier way to navigate the journey. Consider the example of a graduate named Jason who left school with over $90,000 in debt. At first, the stress was overwhelming, and he worked 60-hour weeks at a job he didn't like just to cover payments. His health started slipping, and he felt like he had no control. Eventually, he sat down and created a clear plan. He refinanced to lower his monthly payments, picked up a side hustle he actually enjoyed, and gave himself permission to still save $50 a month in a travel fund. The difference in his mindset was dramatic. Instead of constantly feeling stuck, he saw progress on the loans while also having small personal wins that reminded him life wasn't only about debt. This example shows that the mental toll is real and powerful, but with structure, community, and balance, it can be managed in a way that prevents it from completely destroying someone's quality of life. The fourth major issue with student debt is that it exposes a larger system failure. The rising cost of education has outpaced inflation, wage growth, and even housing prices, yet students are still told that taking on debt is the only way forward. Universities raise tuition year after year while offering the same programs, and lenders are eager to hand out loans because they know the government often guarantees repayment. The result is a cycle where schools have no incentive to keep costs down, lenders profit from interest, and students are left carrying the burden for decades. This system encourages borrowing without accountability, creating a situation where young adults are pressured into signing life-altering contracts before they even fully understand how compound interest works. The incentives are misaligned. Schools get paid up front, lenders collect interest for years, but the students are the only ones who truly lose. This systemic problem extends beyond just tuition. Many schools push students into expensive dorms, meal plans, and fees that have little to do with education itself. At the same time, universities often fail to provide adequate career guidance or transparent data on job placement and earnings outcomes. Students enter programs blind to the reality of what their degree is worth in the job market, which is why so many graduate with high debt but low earning potential. The system benefits when people borrow more, not when they succeed after graduation. Even federal policy sometimes worsens the situation by making it easy to borrow large amounts without addressing the root issue of skyrocketing costs. Instead of being a ladder of opportunity, the higher education system often feels like a trap. The solution requires both personal awareness and broader reform. On the personal level, students and families must start questioning the true value of the degree they are paying for. Instead of assuming that all colleges are equal, future students should demand transparency from schools. What are the average starting salaries for this major? How many graduates find jobs in their field? How much debt do they leave with on average? By asking these questions before enrolling, students can make smarter decisions and avoid programs that don't deliver a strong return on investment. Another personal solution is exploring alternatives outside of the traditional university system. Trade schools, coding boot camps, certifications, and community colleges can often provide marketable skills at a fraction of the cost. On a broader scale, reform needs to come from both institutions and policymakers. Universities should be held accountable for the outcomes of their graduates. If a school charges $60 in a year for a degree, but most graduates earn $35,000 a year, something is broken. Tying funding or accreditation to outcomes could pressure schools to focus on delivering real value instead of raising tuition endlessly. Policies that limit predatory lending practices or incentivize schools to control costs could help rebalance the system. Employers can also step in by recognizing alternative credentials and reducing the overemphasis on 4-year degrees when they aren't necessary for success. These systemic shifts would reduce reliance on loans and give students real choices. Take the example of a student named Maria who was accepted into a prestigious private university with a tuition price of $55,000 a year. She initially planned to take on the loans because she was told it would be worth it. But after researching job placement data, she realized graduates in her chosen field were only making around $40,000 annually. Instead of following the traditional path, she enrolled in a state school at 1/3 of the cost and supplemented her education with an online certification. By graduation, she not only had minimal debt, but also skills employers valued. She quickly landed a solid job and began building savings immediately, while many of her peers at the private school were drowning in debt. This example highlights that while the system itself is broken, informed choices and alternative paths can protect individuals from being trapped by its flaws. Another major problem with student debt is the lack of awareness around real alternatives. For years, society has pushed the idea that a traditional 4-year university is the only legitimate path to success, and as a result, millions of young people never even consider other routes. This creates a situation where students feel forced into borrowing large sums of money just to get a degree, even when that degree may not be necessary for their chosen career. The problem is compounded by high school counselors and cultural expectations that frame college as the default choice, while trade schools, apprenticeships, and alternative programs are treated as backup plans. The reality is that this mindset traps people into debt that could have been avoided entirely if they had explored different options. The other hidden problem is that many borrowers don't realize how many resources already exist to reduce or even eliminate the need for large loans. Scholarships go unclaimed every year because students don't take the time to apply. Employers often offer tuition reimbursement programs, but students aren't told about them. There are also state-specific grants, work-study programs, and income share agreements that can make education more affordable. Yet, because the traditional narrative is so strong, apply, borrow, graduate, most people overlook these opportunities. As a result, debt becomes the default, and alternatives that could save tens of thousands of dollars are ignored. The solution begins with changing the way people think about education and success. Instead of assuming college equals success, Students need to evaluate education as an investment and compare options based on both cost and return. Trade schools, for example, often cost a fraction of what a 4-year degree does, and graduates can step into well-paying careers in fields like plumbing, electrical work, HVAC, and technology trades without massive debt. Coding boot camps and online programs can provide skills for in-demand jobs in software, digital marketing, or design at a fraction of the cost of a degree. Community colleges are another overlooked solution. By completing general education requirements at a low cost and then transferring to a 4-year school, students can cut their total expenses in half while still graduating with the same degree. Another key solution is aggressively pursuing scholarships and aid. Too many students apply to just a handful of scholarships and stop there, but with persistence, it's possible to secure thousands in funding. The same goes for employer programs. Many companies now offer partial or full tuition reimbursement as a benefit, and taking advantage of those opportunities can drastically reduce or eliminate debt. Even for those already in repayment, alternatives like loan forgiveness for public service workers, repayment assistance programs, or employer contributions toward loans can make a huge difference. The point is that alternatives exist at every stage, but students have to be intentional in seeking them out. Take the example of a student named David who initially planned to attend a private university with a tuition price of $45 a year. That path would have left him with over $100 in debt. Instead, he started at a local community college where he completed 2 years for less than $6 in total. He then transferred to a state university to finish his degree, cutting his total cost to just $25. On top of that, he applied for multiple scholarships and secured $10 in aid, leaving him with only $15 in loans. To make it even better, while finishing his degree, he participated in an employer tuition reimbursement program, which covered his last semester. By graduation, he owed almost nothing, and within a year, he was already building savings. This example shows that real alternatives do exist, but the problem is that too few people are told about them, and even fewer are encouraged to pursue them. The sixth and final problem with student debt is that too many people believe they are powerless to change their situation, when in reality there are both personal strategies and policy level changes that can make a massive difference. The perception that debt is an unavoidable life sentence keeps borrowers stuck in frustration, instead of taking steps that can lighten the burden and create momentum toward freedom. This mindset issue is dangerous because it prevents action. When people feel defeated, they default to making only minimum payments, ignore refinancing opportunities, or fail to take advantage of programs designed to help them. At the same time, the broader system often leaves borrowers feeling like they're fighting alone, when in fact collective solutions could help fix the root of the crisis. The personal solution starts with creating a proactive plan that turns debt repayment into a strategy rather than a source of fear. Simple steps like tracking every loan, organizing them by balance and interest rate, and applying targeted repayment methods such as the avalanche or snowball can create clarity. Refinancing is another option that can lower interest rates and reduce the overall cost of borrowing, especially for those with strong credit or steady income. For some borrowers, switching to income-driven repayment plans offers breathing room that makes it possible to stay afloat while still saving for other goals. The key is to treat debt like a financial challenge with tools and tactics, rather than as a fixed weight that can never be managed. Beyond personal action, policy changes are part of the solution as well. Programs like student loan forgiveness for public service workers, caps on interest rates, and expanded grant funding could ease the burden for millions. Governments could tie institutional funding to job placement outcomes, forcing schools to align tuition costs with the real value of their degrees. Employers can also play a role by offering student loan repayment benefits as part of compensation packages, just like health insurance or retirement plans. These broader reforms don't erase the need for individual responsibility, but they recognize that the debt crisis is not just about personal choices, it's also about a broken system that needs fixing. When both individuals and institutions take action, the problem becomes manageable rather than overwhelming. For an example, consider someone like Rachel, who graduated with $70 in loans and initially felt crushed by the balance. At first, she ignored her statements and made only the minimum payments, which barely touched the principal. Eventually, she decided to take back control. She refinanced her highest interest loans, switched to a repayment strategy that focused on the avalanche method, and picked up a side hustle tutoring online. At the same time, she joined a public service program that made her eligible for loan forgiveness after 10 years. The combination of personal discipline and systemic support created a pathway out that once felt impossible. Today, she is on track to be debt-free years sooner than she thought, with investments growing alongside her repayments. Her story illustrates that while the problem is huge, solutions exist both at the individual and policy level, and when combined, they can transform what once felt like a life sentence into a manageable challenge. So, quick recap. Student debt is massive in scale. It steals opportunities. It weighs heavy on mental health. It's fueled by a broken system, but there are real alternatives and actionable solutions that can help you fight back. The key is knowing the problem, taking control of your choices, and using every tool available to break free. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe, drop a like, And leave a comment below sharing your own experience with student debt. I'd love to hear your story. And don't miss the next video where I'll dive into breaking the cycle, smarter money moves every student should know before borrowing. That one's going to give you the playbook to avoid the traps we talked about today.